Hey, big fucking dreamers. So pumped to be here with you today and to talk about one of my favorite communication methods. I would say it's actually the favorite communication method. I have been knee deep in this method probably for about a month and a half now, teaching it to both my level 1 students and my level 2 students in the life and work transformation. This method is nonviolent communication. So I talk about it quite a lot. And I was actually on the phone with my mom the other day and she was like, "Oh, what are you doing?" And I was like, "I'm just listening to this podcast on nonviolent communication and repressed anger." She was just silent. And then she just said, "Of course you are." And I was like, "Yes, of course I am, Mom. This is what I do." So this is nonviolent communication. It is a theory by Marshall Rosenberg. It's endorsed by a lot of people, and I would say it's in like one of probably the biggest endorsements is by Kristin Neff, who studies who is a researcher on self-compassion. So if you've done any self-compassion work, you will likely know Kristin Neff. I love it because it's direct, it's positive, it's actionable. So today I'm going to walk you through a little bit about the 4 steps in nonviolent communication, how to do it, and also why this is going to be good for you. So this method, and why I really care about this is because I did not know how to communicate at all. And from, when I was drinking, if I would have relationship issues with a partner, I would drink excessively, black out, yell at them. Like that was kind of the only way I knew how to say that my feelings were hurt or that something was wrong. And then as I got into corporate life, I think a lot of my communication has been like shutting down as well. So this will be really good for you if you feel like you are a people pleaser, you have really high expectations of yourselves, and that people sometimes let you down and you feel resentful a lot, but you don't know how to say it. You don't really have the words and you don't know how to express what is wrong with you. And you want to be able to speak communicatively, but you also want stronger relationships, both personally and professionally. I'm going to walk you through the 4 points, but I would say that this method, what it starts to do is it starts to retrain the way that we think. Because what typically happens is that there will be a stimulus, like something will happen. Let's say that's with a partner. Let's say that's with your boss at work. Let's say that's with your dog. There will be a stimulus and then there will be a response. And that response may be anger. That response may be shutting down. That response may be making a passive aggressive comment. And what we want to do is actually lessen the time, or we want to explore the area between stimulus and response so that you actually have control and you're retraining the way that your brain processes your emotions. So that's what nonviolent communication does. It takes some things that are quite reactive and instantaneous, and it allows you and gives you the space as well and the format to be able to say how you're feeling. It also makes sure that your needs are met because you're actually stating your needs and understanding what they are. But it does require a level of consciousness. So it requires a high level of awareness and pretty much a high level of vulnerability to say, okay, this is what I need. This is how I feel. Now I'm going to walk you through the 4 steps for nonviolent communication. And I have seen clients have come to me and they're just like, I had a client the other day who, she was in sales and she was really struggling with her customer success manager, but she would say things to her and her customer success manager wasn't delivering on the things that she needed. And she was saying things to her customer success manager, like, how can I support you? Are you overwhelmed? Like, what do you need help with? And she wasn't actually just directly saying what the issue was and making a clear request. So if you are like, I have requests of people or expectations of people, but they don't fulfill them, it's likely because you haven't stated them accurately, or there's someone that isn't able to fulfill that certain need. And that's actually a whole other podcast. The 4 steps in nonviolent communication are going through is observation. So what's actually happening, a feeling, how you feel about it, the need, and then the request. So the first step is observation. So you're going to say things that you would say like stand up in a court of law. And what typically happens here is that a lot of times when people are describing what's happening to them, they use a lot of opinions. So an example could be like this was an example from one of my clients where she said to someone, "You are extremely difficult to get a hold of." She was saying this to one of her friends. Okay, that's actually an opinion because that person might just say, "No, I'm not. I'm fine. You can get a hold of me fine. You just call me." Versus if you said, "My last 5 texts to you have gone unanswered," that's a fact. So that can't be disputed. So what usually happens is people assign a lot of opinions about what's happening, and there's usually some language that's quite judgmental language. So in nonviolent communication, step one is just observing what happened and not assigning fact to it. So with my other client who was really struggling with her CSM, the observation could be, we went to a client meeting and you said that you would send a follow-up, and you sent the follow-up 3 weeks later. Total fact. That can't be argued. You can look at the time of the meeting. You can look at the time of the email sent. The next step is feelings. And this is actually pretty difficult for people to actually just say, I feel blank. Because usually the pitfalls in this step are people that say like, I feel that, and then they'll state an opinion. I feel that you don't care. Great, that's an opinion. That's not a feeling. Or you made me feel disrespected. That is not taking ownership of your own feelings. That's actually placing the blame on other people versus saying, I felt lonely, sad, or I feel abandoned. Now, I feel abandoned is an actual feeling, but it's interesting because in feelings, there's two categories. So one of them is actual feelings. And then another is, and we call in nonviolent communication, they're called need-serving feelings. And need-serving feelings expect your experience, not others' behavior. So oftentimes it signals unmet needs. They signal vulnerability. So those are like, I feel lonely, I feel sad, I feel disappointed, I feel scared, I feel anxious or frustrated. It's not a judgment on what other people are doing to you. It's a method to signal how you feel, and it can be quite vulnerable. It can be a lot vulnerable if you were to say to your partner, you never wash the dishes and I feel angry at you or something like that, versus if you said you have left dishes in the sink the past 3 nights and I feel lonely as a result of that. You can't argue with that because that's your emotions, versus a lot of times what people say to other people is actually interpretations. So these are not actually feelings, they're interpretations of what's going on. And these tend to be an evaluation of other people's behavior, and they're not actual emotions. So these include, I feel attacked, manipulated, used, abandoned, judged, invalidated, controlled, dismissed. So again, all of these are in relation to someone else. So when you're stating your very clear feeling, you want it to be only in relation to you. So for example, my client who was going through with one of her friends who wasn't answering her texts, she could say, I feel lonely, or I feel isolated. That's totally valid. My other client who was having trouble with her customer success manager, she could say, I feel overwhelmed and I feel like alone. So again, because no one can actually argue with that. So step one is we have the observation. Step two is we have the feeling. Now, step three is the need. So this is really interesting because in the need, you actually want to figure out what it is that you want in a relationship. And the need for what you want is usually tied to a value. So you could say, I really need community and clarity in our friendship. That's what my client could say to her friend who wasn't answering her text messages. But you want to make sure that in the need section that you're not blaming. So an example of blaming would be like, I need you to stop being so inconsistent. That's really blaming the other person. Or my other client who was like having issues with their customer success manager, the need could be like, I need to feel like we're a team, and I need to feel like trust in this relationship, versus I need you to do more. I need you to be more accountable. Like that's blaming. No one really knows what that means. So the values behind those needs could be trust, it could be support, and it could be respect as well. So again, when people usually communicate, they don't really know what they need. And that's a huge pitfall, and something that, as I've explored this with a lot of my clients, they've been able to say, okay, I've actually identified my needs, and then I can state them. Now, the last step 4, and this is a fucking biggie. This is one that I absolutely love because people use such vague language that is so unclear and so subjective, and people don't actually state what they actually want. So examples of this is, I just need you to support me, or I need you to respect my boundaries, or I need you to be a better teammate to me, What does that mean? No one knows what those mean. That could be so subjective. It's like, what the fuck? I have no idea what you just said. And a lot of people just talk in vague generalities, especially in the corporate space. It's like you've been talking for 10 minutes, but you've literally said nothing. So when you are making a request from someone, you want it to be clear, you want it to be concrete, and you want it to be actionable and positive. So for example, my client that was saying to her friend, I would really like you to respond to my text messages more. A vague request could be, could you make more of an effort in our friendship? It'd be so hard for the friend to meet that. It's like, what does that mean? Versus a clear response is, when I text you, could you respond to me within 24 hours? Also, could we go for coffee or lunch next week? Those are so clear. Someone can say yes or no. They actually know what you're asking. It's not subjective at all. So a lot of pitfalls around this is people are not clear enough with their requests because they don't actually know what their requests are. So my other client with her CSM, when we worked this through, the request was, can you please send client follow-ups within 48 hours? Super clear. Can you do this? Yes, no. Think of how much better that is versus my client coming to the CSM and saying, how can I support you? It's like, I don't know, leave me alone. I don't want you to support me. Versus, can you actually do something that I can fulfill? So start to see how the difference in language and how powerful it can be when you are being so super clear. I had to do this with a family member recently. And I will say that this is actually, it is a lot easier in corporate settings because usually the ask is a lot more clear. It's a lot more actionable. People are responsible. People are getting paid as well to do a job. So it's not as difficult to understand what the request is. The request is usually a lot harder in personal situations. It's usually a lot harder with family, usually a lot harder with long-term friendships. A lot of times people will get really in their head about it as well. So just know that like doing this method is actually a lot more difficult with friendships with family members in your personal life than in your professional life. But regardless, I would say start doing the easy ones first. So don't start nonviolent communication if you have a 35-year difficult relationship with your mother and you're like, I'm just going to start out with nonviolent communication. Like start using this in a low lift environment. Maybe it is with your customer success manager. Maybe it's even with your manager or a stakeholder of yours, or maybe it's a friend even. This is something that we spend a lot of time on in the life and work transformation, both in level 1 and level 2. Level 1 is a basic overview. Level 2, we look at this more in terms of emotional regulation. We understand which emotions are coming up. Then we look at this in terms of clean pain and dirty pain through acceptance and commitment therapy. So there's so many. This is just kind of scratching the surface. There's so many layers that we can get deep. I would say if you have trouble communicating in your life, this is a fantastic method. It's completely changed my life. If you want to explore this even more, send me a DM about it. This is something that we do, again, very thoroughly in the life and work transformation. So also, I'd love to hear from you. Does this resonate? If it does, leave a comment on YouTube, leave a comment on Spotify. If you've used nonviolent communication or you feel like this is dropping any aha moments, and this is just like a, cheering you on for no vague language. Let's get super fucking clear about what it is that we want and how we can ask for it. That is it from me, big fucking dreamers. This was just like a short, snappy one today. But let me know in the comments if you loved it. And I hope that this helped you achieve your big fucking dreams. And I will see you in 2 weeks.